I have been doing DoorDash long enough to understand that the city changes after midnight. The noise drains out of it. The roads stretch longer than they should. Streetlights feel less like guidance and more like witnesses. Most nights it's just me, my cards, and the quiet hum of orders coming and going. I pick up food, I drop it off, I move on. I do not think about the people behind the doors. I did not, at least, until about 3 weeks ago when I started getting deliveries to the same house. At first, it felt like coincidence. Same street, same end of the lane where the lights do not quite reach. Same house sitting there like it has been waiting longer than everything around it. The instructions were always identical. Leave it at the door, do not knock. I followed them without question the first time. I parked outside, engine still running, staring at the house longer than I needed to. There was no porch light, no sound, just one dim light glowing from an upstairs window. It felt less like someone was home and more like something was awake. I told myself I was overthinking it. I grabbed the bag, walked up, placed it carefully near the door, took the photo, and left. That should have been the end of it. It was not. The next night I got the same address again, different restaurant, same instructions, same stillness, same upstairs light that never seemed to flicker. Then again the night after that, and the night after that. It stopped feeling random. It started feeling like a pattern. Like I had been placed into something that was already repeating before I noticed it. I began to see things I would have ignored before. The food was always gone by the next delivery, but there was never any sign of movement. No sound of a door opening, no footsteps, nothing to suggest someone had actually taken it. The app never showed a profile picture, no ratings, just a name that never stayed in my head for long, like it slipped away the moment I stopped looking at it, and every time I stepped out of my car I felt it, that quiet, steady awareness. Not from the street, not from any neighbour, from the house itself, like it knew I was there before I even reached the door. About a week in, the tips started getting bigger. Not normal big, wrong big, the kind that makes you pause for a second before accepting and then accept anyway because it is hard to say no to something that easy. I told myself it was just a good customer, nothing more, but I kept coming back, night after night. It reached a point where when that address appeared on my screen, I accepted it without thinking, like the decision had already been made somewhere before I saw it. The first time she spoke to me was a Tuesday. It had been a slow night, and I was about to head home when her order came in again. When I pulled up, everything looked exactly the same. Same darkness, same single light upstairs, same volants pressing against the car windows. I walked up, placed the bag down, and as I straightened, the door behind it shifted slightly. Not fully opening, just enough to break the line between outside and inside. I froze. I did not turn around, I did not knock. I just stood there listening to nothing. Then I heard her voice, soft, close, calm in a way that did not feel normal. "You're later than usual." It did not sound like a complaint. It sounded like a fact, like she had already known when I would arrive and I had somehow failed to match it. I muttered something about traffic without turning to face her and walked back to my car faster than I wanted to admit. The whole drive after that, her voice stayed with me. Not loud, not threatening, just present, like it had settled somewhere in the back of my mind and refused to leave. After that night, the deliveries changed, not in a big way, in small ways that built up. There were notes now, not in the app, on the door, tucked under the bag, written neatly like they had been placed there with care. "Thank you for coming back. You are very consistent, and the one that stayed with me the longest. You do not seem afraid." I did not know how to feel about that because I was starting to feel something. Not panic, not yet, just a slow creeping unease that grew every time I turned into that dark lane, every time I stepped out of my car and felt that same unseen attention settle on me. Still, I kept accepting the orders. I kept going back. I kept standing there a little longer than necessary after each delivery, like I was waiting for the door to move again, like I wanted it to. By the end of the second week, it no longer felt like I was just delivering food. It felt like I was part of something that had been watching me long before I realized it. Then tonight, the pattern broke. The order came in like always. Same address, same late hour, but the instructions were different. I noticed it before I even picked up the food, and I remember staring at my phone longer than usual, reading the line again just to make sure I was not imagining it. "The door will be open, please bring it inside." Something about the way it was written felt deliberate, like it had been waiting to change, like this was always going to happen eventually. I thought about declining it. For a second, I really did, but my thumb moved before I could decide. Accept. When I checked the order again a moment later, I realized something else. The option to cancel was gone, not disabled, not loading, just not there. I told myself it was a glitch, it had to be. Things bug out all the time. Still, I drove. The roads were emptier than usual, even for that hour. When I turned into her lane, it felt quieter than it ever had before, like the whole place was holding itself still. I parked in the same spot, turned off the engine, and for a moment I just sat there, looking at the house. The upstairs light was on. Of course it was. But tonight the front door was different. It was already open, not wide, just enough. A thin dark gap waiting in the frame. I picked up the bag slowly and stepped out of the car. The air felt heavier, warmer than it should have been. Each step toward the door felt louder than normal, like the silence around me was amplifying everything. I stopped just short of the entrance and looked at it. That small opening, that quiet invitation. And for the first time since this started, I hesitated. Not because I did not understand the instructions, but because something in me understood them perfectly. Up until now, I'd always stayed outside. Tonight, I was being asked to step in. I stood there longer than I should have, just outside the doorway, holding the bag like it weighed more than it did, staring into that narrow opening as if it might widen on its own or close again and make the decision for me, but it did neither, just wait. And after a few seconds that stretched too far, I told myself it was just another delivery, just another instruction. I stepped forward and pushed the door open enough to slip inside, and the first thing I noticed was the warmth. Not the comfortable kind, but something heavier, like the air had been sitting still for too long, like it had nowhere to go. The second thing was the silence. Not empty silence, but the kind that feels occupied, like a room where a conversation has just stopped the moment you walk in. I took a few steps forward, letting the door rest behind me without fully closing it. I made sure of that. I remember thinking I should keep it open, just in case, even though I could not explain what just in case meant anymore. The interior of the house was dim, lit only by a soft yellow glow that seemed to come from somewhere deeper inside, not from any visible lamp near the entrance. The walls were plain, too plain, almost bare except for a few framed photographs arranged in careful lines. I found myself glancing at them as I moved past, not out of curiosity, but because something about them pulled at my attention in a way I could not ignore. The same woman appeared in all of them. That much was clear even at a glance, but what unsettled me was not her presence. It was the lack of change. The photos looked old, decades apart judging by the clothes and the faint fading of colour, but she looked exactly the same in every single one. Same face, same expression, same stillness. Like time had been moving around her instead of through her. I forced myself to look away and focused on why I was there. I called out quietly something simple like delivery. My voice sounded wrong in that space, too loud and too small at the same time. It did not echo, it just stopped, as if the house absorbed it. And for a moment there was no response, just that same steady silence pressing in from every direction, and then her voice came again. Not from far away, not from upstairs, but somewhere just beyond the edge of the light ahead. "You can bring it to the table," she said, calm, steady, like she had been watching me from the moment I stepped inside. I swallowed and moved forward, each step slow and deliberate. The floor did not creak, nothing shifted. It was like walking through a place that did not react to being walked through. I reached a small dining area where a single table sat under a dim hanging light, the rest of the room fading into shadow around it, and I placed the bag down carefully, my hands lingering on it for a second longer than necessary, like letting go of it would somehow make everything else more real. "Thank you," she said, and when I looked up she was there, standing just across the Bible, close enough now that I could see her clearly for the first time, and for a second everything in me went still, because she did not look like what I had expected. There was nothing overtly wrong, nothing that would make someone run at first glance. She looked normal, almost effortlessly so, but the longer I looked, the more the details began to shift into something else. Her skin was too still, not pale exactly, but untouched by anything that suggested warmth or motion. Her eyes caught the light in a way that did not reflect it back properly, like the brightness stopped just short of reaching whatever was behind them. And her smile, it held for just a fraction too long, not fading naturally, not changing with expression, just staying there as if it had been placed rather than formed. "You came in," she said softly, tilting her head slightly, studying me in a way that felt careful and precise, like she was noticing things I had not realized about myself. "You asked me to," I replied. And even as I said it, it felt like a weak explanation, like I was justifying something to myself more than to her. Her gaze lingered on me for a moment, then shifted briefly toward the door behind me, still slightly open before returning to me again. "Most people would not," she said, and there was no judgment in her voice, no surprise either, just quiet acknowledgement, like this had confirmed something she already believed. I did not know what to say to that. I said nothing, and the silence between us stretched again, but this time it felt different, heavier, more focused, like it was centered entirely on me. She took a small step closer to the table, not toward me exactly, but close enough that the space between us felt narrower. "You have been coming here every night," she continued, her voice almost conversational now. "You never rush, you never leave immediately, you always stay a moment longer than you need to." My chest tightened slightly because she was right, and hearing it said out loud made it feel less like coincidence and more like something that had been observed, measured, understood. I started, then stopped, because I did not have a real answer, and she watched me struggle to find one with that same calm, unblinking attention. "You do not seem afraid," she said again, repeating the note I had read days ago, and this time, standing there in front of her, I realized that it had not been a comment, it had been a conclusion. I let out a small breath, not quite a laugh, not quite steady. "I think I am," I admitted, and that was the first honest thing I'd said since stepping into the house. Something in her expression shifted then, not dramatically, just enough to register, like a subtle adjustment in focus. "That is good," she replied, and the way she said it made the word feel heavier than it should have, like it carried meaning I had not yet caught up to. My eyes drifted again, almost against my will, to the photographs on the walls beyond her, and now that I was closer, I could see them more clearly, different years, different settings, but always her, always unchanged, and I felt that creeping realization begin to take shape in the back of my mind, slow and unwelcome. "You noticed them," she said quietly, following my gaze without turning her head. I hesitated, then nodded once. "They are old," I said, choosing my words carefully. "But you—" I stopped again, because finishing that sentence felt like stepping into something I was not ready to name. She did not help me finish it. She just watched me, waiting, patient in a way that felt endless. "I have been here for a long time," she said finally, not answering the question directly, but not denying it either. And there it was, the moment where everything shifted from strange to something else entirely, something sharper, something that pressed in from all sides at once. I felt it then, clear and undeniable, that whatever routine I had been part of, whatever pattern I had stepped into, it had never been about food. It had never been about convenience. It had been about this, about bringing me here, about standing in this room with her, while she looked at me like I was something she had been waiting to understand, and suddenly the warmth of the house felt suffocating. The silence too close, the open door behind me not nearly as reassuring as it had been seconds ago, because I realized something I had not considered before. I had stepped inside because she asked me to, but I had stayed because I wanted to know, and now that I knew even a part of it, leaving did not feel as simple as turning around and walking out. Not because she was stopping me, not because anything physical blocked the way, but because something in the air, in her presence, in the quiet way she watched me, made it feel like the moment I crossed that threshold had already changed something I could not undo. I do not remember deciding to leave, not in a clear, deliberate way. It was more like something in me finally caught up to what I had already understood, and my body followed before my thoughts could argue with it. I stepped back slightly, my eyes flicking once more to the open door behind me, still there, still within reach, and for a brief second I felt a strange relief at the sight of it, like it proved I still had a way out. "I should go," I said, and my voice sounded steadier than I felt. She did not react immediately. She just watched me the same way she had been since I walked in, that calm, attentive stillness that made it impossible to tell what she was thinking, or if she was thinking at all in the way I understood. Then she gave a small nod, almost imperceptible. "You can," she said, and there was something about that phrasing that settled uneasily in my chest. Not "you should," not of course, just "you can," like permission instead of agreement. I did not wait for anything else. I turned and walked toward the door, each step feeling heavier than it had when I came in, the warmth fading slightly as I got closer to the entrance, the cool night air slipping through the gap like a reminder of something normal, something familiar. I stepped outside without looking back, and the moment my feet hit the pavement, it felt like I had surfaced from underwater, like I could finally breathe again without thinking about it. I did not stop. I did not slow down. I walked straight to my car, got in, locked the doors immediately, and sat there for a few seconds, hands resting on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead, listening to the silence inside the car, waiting for my heartbeat to settle into something steady again. I told myself it was over, that I had delivered the food, followed the instructions, and left, just like any other order. But even as I tried to convince myself of that, I knew it was not true, because as nothing about that had felt like a normal delivery, and nothing about the way she had looked at me felt finished. I started the engine and pulled away from the house without checking the mirrors, without giving myself a chance to see if she was standing in the doorway watching me leave. I drove longer than I needed to that night, taking roads I did not usually take, keeping the radio off, letting the quiet fill the car, while my mind replayed everything that had just happened. In fragments, her voice, the photographs. The way she had said that is good when I admitted I was afraid. The way she had said you can instead of you should. And the more I thought about it, the more it felt like I had not been dismissed, just released, temporarily, like I had been allowed to leave because something about me had already been decided. By the time I got home, the sky was just starting to lighten at the edges, that faint grey that signals the end of night. I remember sitting in my parked car for a long time before going inside, staring at my phone resting on the dashboard, waiting for something I could not explain. Eventually I told myself I was being irrational, that I was tired, that I needed sleep. I went inside, shut the door behind me, and tried to put it out of my mind. I lay down, closed my eyes, and for a while it almost worked. The exhaustion pulled me under quickly, and the last thing I remember before falling asleep was telling myself I would ignore that address if it ever showed up again, that I would decline it no matter how much it paid, that whatever curiosity had pulled me in tonight was done, finished, over. When I woke up later that afternoon, the first thing I did without thinking was reach for my phone. There it was, already waiting on the screen, a new order notification, same address, same quiet lane at the end of the street, and for a second, I just stared at it, my thumb hovering above the screen, that same hesitation from the night before creeping back in, only now it felt thinner, weaker, like something had already worn it down. I looked at the details, the restaurant, the amount, everything all except for the note. When I opened it, my chest tightened slightly as I read it. Not because it was threatening, not because it was different in a dramatic way, but because it felt like a continuation of something that had already started, something that had not ended when I walked out of that house. You left too quickly, it said, simple, neat, written in the same careful tone as before, and beneath it a second line, one that made the decision for me before I could pretend I still had one. Come back tonight, or I should have declined it. I know that. I understood it in that moment as clearly as anything I have ever known. But my thumb moved anyway, pressing accept before my mind could catch up, and as the screen shifted and the order locked in, I felt that same quiet realization settles in, heavier this time, more certain, that whatever had started with those late-night deliveries had not ended when I stepped outside, it had only changed. I glanced up from my phone, just for a second. I caught my reflection in the dark screen, and for a moment, it felt like I was looking at someone who had already decided to go back long before I admitted it to myself.